Welcome to this episode of the Sports Detective Podcast Show. My name is James Williams, and today we discuss if Joe Milton should start over Drake Maye for the New England Patriots. What are we talking about? Well, in case you guys missed it, there was a tidbit that came out of New England Patriots training camp last week that the sixth-round pick, Joe Milton out of Tennessee, was outplaying the New England Patriots first-round pick, Drake Maye, during their practices, and this led to Colin Cowherd going on his show last Thursday, and he basically did a take where he was like, hey, I wouldn't be that shocked if Joe Milton ends up starting over Drake Maye this season. And then he doubled down on it again on Friday, and I'm going to show you that Friday clip, and we're going to react to it. I'm going to kind of add a little bit of context as we go through the video, because I do think some of the stuff that he talks about doesn't necessarily, like, you need a little bit of a bigger picture of it. So we'll go ahead and play this clip, and I'll pause a few times in the middle here to kind of give you more context, and then we'll talk about the Joe Milton Drake Maye debate afterwards. So here. Okay, so FS1 very much is proud of their copyright, and we had to, when I was uploading this onto YouTube, the video got declined because of copyright issues. So I'm doing this screen share thing on Twitter. I used to do this when I started using this program, but then it got crappy, and it always was laggy. So I don't know if that's going to be the case here. I haven't done this in a while. So if it is a little laggy on the screen share here, just know that this is the only way I could get the audio or part of the video on this, but this should be fine. If this doesn't work, I'm going to eat the computer. So I'm basically just going to re-record the points I made in the original video here, and we're going to be playing this at 1.25 speed to just kind of like power through this. By the way,
apparently my take that Joe Milton, the sixth-round quarterback, who is kind of his last year at Tennessee, a touchdown machine in the best conference, could get real snap.
Not a touchdown machine. We'll get that to that here in a minute.
Apparently that was a hot take. Let me ask you, if I had said the day after the 2022 draft that Brock Purdy, the 262nd pick, would eventually replace Trey Lance, the number 3 pick, they would dump Trey Lance, would that have been a hot take? Oh, it would have. If I'd have said a year before Kevin Durant went to the Warriors, I suspect Kevin Durant will leave OKC and go to his rival, that too would have been a hot take. Be careful about hot takes. They happen all the time. Joe Milton, in the best college football conference in the country, had 30 touchdown passes, rushed for 7 touchdowns, and had 5 picks. Passer rating through the roof, completed 65%, and had easily the strongest arm of any quarterback in this draft.
Okay, so let's talk about those stats that he's showing us right there. This is incredibly misleading, guys. So if you look at, you guys notice the trick that they're doing here. The trick is, and I know that the Twitter Riverside thing gets super blurry, but if you can see the stats that they have on the screen, they have the last 2 seasons at Tennessee, a 10-4 record, 64.7% completion percentage, 30-5 touchdown interception ratio. I want to focus on that touchdown to interception ratio. That is incredibly misleading. So let me describe to you guys how that Tennessee offense works. And the reason they did it for 2 seasons. The reason they did it for 2 seasons is because if you just looked at the 2023 season for Joe Milton, it would have been 20 touchdowns to 5 interceptions, which would have been worse than the previous 2 seasons that Hendon Hooker had. So there's a reason that they kind of did it like that to spruce it up a little bit. So you're like, well, how did he have 10 touchdowns as a backup? This is what the Tennessee offense does, if you've ever watched them play. Josh Heupel runs the super fast, high-paced, offense at Tennessee, and basically, if you've ever watched them play, that even if they are up by a bunch and they have their backups in, they still run the same exact offense. And basically, they try to score for an entire 60-minute period. I was watching a game earlier this year. I can't remember if it was a game against Vanderbilt. I feel like it was against Vanderbilt. It was some crappy team. And late in the year, I remember because I had money on Tennessee to cover 27.5 or something, and I needed them to get a touchdown. And they were driving with 2 minutes left in the game with their back at Nico Iamaleava. And it was they were just still trying to score. The game, they could have just ran out the clock, taken 3 knees, and they would have been fine. But they didn't do that because that's not what they do. So some of those, my point of bringing that up is some of those stats there that you see on your screen are from, the touchdown stats are from blowout games against Ball State and Akron in his year when he was backing up Hendon Hooker. So those stats are very misleading. It is misleading. Again, they're not that impressive, but they're also kind of misleading.
Heupel and Jim Harbaugh fell in love with him. Now, he misses open receivers. He can be a little very inconsistent throwing the ball, but I'll throw this out to you. Jacoby Brissett has been benched or has been injured during a season more than once. 60 quarterbacks played last year. And I will tell you, of all the first-round quarterbacks, Drake Maye is the least prepared to play right now in a culture in New England that leans heavily to the defensive side. So if Brissett goes down, you're telling me Joe Milton, bigger, stronger arm, better athlete than Drake Maye potentially, wouldn't get snaps? I don't know what's going to happen. But the idea that it couldn't happen, the SEC is the best football conference. Go look at Tennessee's schedule. Go watch the first half of Joe Milton against Alabama. Go watch the first half of that game. Go watch it. Some of you were selling me Will Levis. I'm not sure Will Levis is better than Joe Milton. I mean, didn't Will Levis lose to Vanderbilt?
Okay, two things on that. The year, it was one of the years that, I think it was the year that Hendon Hooker got hurt. Joe Milton started the game against Vanderbilt. Joe Milton threw like 50% in that game. He was like 11 for 21, maybe slightly above 50%. So also too, Will Levis, if you're going to brag about Joe Milton playing the SEC, Will Levis played in the SEC at Kentucky and was pretty solid above average quarterback if you don't want to say great.
Okay. The academic power of the South. So slow down on this. I just think a lot of things, if you look at the NFL, 60 quarterbacks play. Patriots don't have a great O-line. They've missed on several picks. They have one of the worst O-lines, receiving cores, running back rooms, defensive culture. They are not going to move the ball. Do you think they're going to stick with Jacoby Brissett for 17 weeks? At some point, they're going to go to a backup. I'm just saying, could he take snaps? Why not? Why couldn't he take snaps? Remember, if Brock Purdy came out and I said they're going to go with Purdy over Trey Lance, that would have been outrageous, and it actually happened. So, not saying it's going to happen, but I wouldn't be surprised at all. Jim Harbaugh and Josh Heupel, they know offense. They both fell in love with him. Now, he frustrated them, but, some guys are developed more slowly. I mean, he took a lot of snaps in college. He bounced around in college. He had a lot of great personnel guys really like him. Misses a lot of throws, but he's a power thrower on a team.
Misses a lot of throws. You think that's kind of important if you're a quarterback in the NFL. You want to do the easy things down.
I mean, my guess is New England will be the lowest scoring team in the NFL. And I don't think it'll be particularly close. You could say, Carolina, they have an offensive coach. Well, the Giants, they have an offensive coach. I got a rookie defensive coach and bad everywhere. I think all three of these guys are going to play. And Milton can be impressive. I've watched enough of him. You go watch half here and a half there. I mean, Harbaugh fell in love with him. Not for long, but he fell in love with him. He's an impressive thrower of the football. And by the way,
okay, so let's talk about the Harbaugh Heupel thing as we cut that off there at the end. So Joe Milton goes to Michigan early on in his career, loses the starting job to Cade McNamara. Cade McNamara is as boring of a quarterback as oatmeal. He is a incredibly bland, incredibly boring quarterback. Cade McNamara, credit to him, did go and win a Big Ten championship in Michigan, but then the next year Harbaugh was like, I need to get rid of Cade McNamara. So Cade McNamara, not necessarily that special of a player. So Joe Milton, he ends up transferring to Tennessee. What happens? We referenced this a little bit earlier. He transfers to Tennessee, and it's like, oh my God, Joe Milton's going to have the starting job. He's going to be, he's got this cannon of an arm. He's going to be playing in this Josh Heupel offense, where he's going to be throwing the ball all over the place. This is a match made in heaven. And then he loses out the job to Hendon Hooker. Is Hendon Hooker's backup for a few years. And then I was talking to my guy from Tennessee, Eric Kane. I had him on about a year ago. We were talking about Joe Milton heading into this season. He's thinking Tennessee can go ahead and win the SEC championship with Joe Milton because it's like, hey, man, Josh Heupel will get the best version of Joe Milton. And is it better than what we saw early on in the weird 2020 year at Michigan? Yes, it was, but it still was a lot that we didn't like. And here's the thing about Joe Milton. If you watch him in a video, and you get to watch him throw a football, but then you have no idea where the football is going, or maybe you even see it like reach halfway to where it's supposed to be. It's halfway part of its destination in its flight in the air. You would be like, oh my God, Joe Milton is the best quarterback that has ever played. But then if you watch the rest of the half of the video where it goes out onto the sideline and concusses a security guy on the sideline because he throws the ball 110 miles an hour, but really doesn't have much accuracy to it, then you're like, oh, okay, I understand why this guy was a 6th round pick. Oh, I understand why this guy had to transfer around. I understand why this guy had to be in college like 6 years. Because the idea of Joe Milton, the idea of like, oh, if we can just figure out that accuracy thing and we can kind of like hone in his arm, then we can make an awesome quarterback. Then we can make an elite quarterback. Guys, that's not what Joe Milton is, man. We've seen it. We've seen it. He was better at Tennessee. He was fine, but there were a lot of other quarterbacks that were better. There was a lot of people too. And if you just talk about the Tennessee part of this, when Hendon Hooker left, the drop off from Hendon Hooker to Joe Milton, it wasn't like a crazy drop off, but it was a drop off. It was a downgrade. Talk to talk to any Tennessee person that you see now. Listen to any Tennessee podcast. Read any sort of Tennessee article talking about Nico Iamaleava. Again, I hope I'm saying that name right. This upcoming season, they are hyped up about Nico, and it's kind of like you're just talking about Joe Milton at Tennessee. It was a downgrade when he took the starting position, and now when he's leaving, it looks like it's an upgrade for Tennessee now that he's gone. So what does that tell you about Joe Milton? It tells you that this guy has a tremendous amount of arm power, but that's about it. That's about it. He looks like a quarterback. The idea of Joe Milton seems awesome, but the reality of it is he's doesn't put up the best stats and, doesn't necessarily like perform the best. So maybe things will be different in the NFL. Everyone deserves second chances. Maybe if he gets with the right personnel, the right coordinator. But again, he was with two gifted offensive coaches in the college level, and expectations weren't met. So I'm out on Joe Milton. People that watch college football the last few years of Joe Milton understand what I'm saying here. But for maybe the NFL people that are watching this that have never seen Joe Milton play, trust me, the idea of Joe Milton is better than actually Joe Milton. Okay, let's talk about Drake Maye here for a second, because I think the perception of Drake Maye has really changed over like the last year. If you go back a year ago, like 12 months ago, and you just say like, oh, like looking at the quarterbacks in the next class, it was Caleb and then it was Drake Maye. And you would feel like how a lot of people talk about Drake Maye, that he had like a huge drop off in his quarterback ranking, because we see this all the time. Like right now, if you look at all of the mock drafts for 2025, Shedeur Sanders, I believe, is like the number one quarterback in some of them. I can guarantee you Shedeur Sanders will not be the first quarterback taken the draft next year. I will book that bet. I do not think he is going to be the first quarterback taken. But we see that all the time. Famously, Matt Barkley was a guy like that, where if he would have left after his junior year at USC, he would have been like a top 5 pick, if not the first overall pick. He comes back, his stock drops. Sam Howell at North Carolina, when he was getting ready to come out, coming into the season, it's like, oh my God, this guy's going to be like a first round pick. He's going to be awesome. And then he had a little bit of a disappointing last season at UNC, and then he falls to the 4th round. This is not the case with Drake Maye. He was going to be the second pick behind Caleb last year, and then Jaden Daniels had like a remarkable season, improved a bunch, won the Heisman Trophy, put up a bunch of numbers, and he jumped Drake Maye. Drake Maye is still the 3rd quarterback off the board. Drake Maye is still a very good quarterback. He's very good in the pocket. He is very good off of structure. At times you could watch him and you're like, hey, maybe he's not making the best decisions. Maybe sometimes he's inaccurate. Maybe sometimes he turns the ball over. But again, if you sometimes when you talk about this stuff with quarterbacks, this is the thing we were talking about last week with Josh Allen, or 2 weeks ago or whenever it was, where it's like, hey, sometimes I'm okay with turnovers. It depends how you were getting the turnovers, because not all turnovers are created the same. This is the thing with Patrick Mahomes coming out of Texas Tech. It was like, hey, this guy turns the ball over a lot. It's like, yeah, he was doing everything for his offense. That was the same thing with Caleb Williams. It's like, I don't know, he turned the ball over a lot more this last year. It's like, yeah, he had to. He was wearing the Superman cape. And that was Drake Maye his entire tenure at UNC. He always put on the Superman cape. This guy is an awesome football player. He is an awesome prospect, and I think he can be an incredibly successful NFL quarterback. But the one good point that Colin made there towards the end about the New England Patriots is they are not very good. They're not very good. That is the one downside to Drake Maye. He went to the worst possible situation. People always, and I think a little bit fairly, but I think it got to a point where it was unfairly criticized the Bears for Justin Fields, and the fact that it's like, oh my God, Justin Fields was put in this like horrible situation where there was no way where he could succeed. And I think Drake Maye is actually in a worse situation because we don't, know much about Drake Maye, the head coach. Their offensive line isn't good. The weapons aren't good, and we're not sure about the direction of this franchise right now. So that's maybe the one way to be a little bit concerned about Drake Maye. But part of me wonders too with him, and this will be the last point that I made. Drake Maye, like we said last year, and we know the thing right now in college football is the transfer portal, NIL, and we know this changes a lot of decisions and a lot of factors with a lot of players. Drake Maye could have very much left North Carolina, and he could have played at a different school last year. He could have played at Notre Dame, or most notably, he probably could have played at Alabama. I think Nick Saban would have taken him over Jalen Milroe. So, would we have a different view of Drake Maye if he went to Alabama, lit it up for a year? Maybe he wins the Heisman or is a Heisman candidate, goes to the college football playoff, wins a duel against Michigan, wins a duel against Washington. Would we have a little bit of a different perception about him? Would we be maybe saying that, like, hey, he should be ahead of Jaden McDaniels? Excuse me, Jaden Daniels, not McDaniels. Would people be doing the same thing that they're doing with Jaden Daniels now, where they're like, I don't know, man, maybe Jaden's better than Caleb? Maybe they'd be saying that about Drake Maye. Just something to think about. Because if he goes to Alabama and lights it up, I think we are looking at Drake Maye in a whole different light than we are right now. So there you have it, guys. I've been talking here for too long. Let me know what you guys think. Am I crazy? I think Drake Maye better than Joe Milton. I think Drake Maye might have been the second best quarterback in this class. I think he's going to be successful at New England. It might take a little bit of time as that organization kind of, transitions outside of the Belichick area. But there you have it, guys. That's going to do it for this episode here today. Let me know what you guys think. If you like this video, please hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. It's the best way to help small channels like this grow. And feel free to follow me on Twitter, JD Major 2. I think that's my handle, or is it JD Major? I don't know. Follow either one of those. The link is in the bio below. So anyway, guys, thank you very much for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.